Hey everyone, you're listening to the Active Turnkey podcast, a podcast designed for hands-off, passive real estate rental investors. In the Active Turnkey podcast, you'll hear Tom Olson and Jared Stoltmeister discuss all things turnkey rentals with other turnkey providers, service providers, and rental investors. Our goal is to help you reach your financial freedom and whatever comes after that. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Active Turnkey podcast. I'm your host, Jared Stoltmeister, and I have with me the Tom Olson.
And you're listening to the Turnkey, the Active Turnkey podcast.
The Active Turnkey podcast, that's right,
just
folks.
to make sure everybody, just remind everybody, this is the one and only Active Turnkey podcast where we talk about turnkey rentals.
That's right.
And how you can create financial freedom through turnkey rentals, how you can be financially free. But what we try to do is to help educate people on the nitty gritty. You know, a lot of times people don't want to know about the nitty gritty. They only teach about the big picture things. Sure. I see a lot of podcasts out there, and they use a lot of the buzzwords like financial freedom. They use a lot of these buzzwords like it's the best rental asset class, which I believe by far. I do believe, and I was even telling my employees this morning at our city hall meeting that I think that the 3 to 5 year turnkey rental, 3 to 5 year rental play is probably the best performing asset class of all. Like honestly, I don't think, I would love for people to try to prove me wrong on this, and that's okay. I would love to debate on it, but I have seen people make way more money on single families than in any other asset class if you're the investor, if you're the one that's actually investing the money. Now, obviously, the syndicators can probably make more money in the multifamily because it's a lot larger deal, and they can make more money as a syndicator, possibly, but not the actual investors. And it's interesting to me that if you look at a multifamily, this might even need to be a whole podcast at some point. Maybe we can do like some graphs and I can show people this. I'd love to actually do I don't have a PowerPoint on this, but I actually want to show a PowerPoint on some of the properties that we've sold for some of our investors over the last couple of years. But if you were to look at a single family rental asset, like you were to look at a multifamily deal. So if you have two deals in front of you, one's going to be a multifamily deal and one's going to show a multifamily pro forma. One's going to be a single-family deal, and it's going to be a single-family pro forma in front of you. Typically, on a multifamily deal pro forma, you are looking at somewhere between a 4 to 6%, what they want to call preferred return, right? So that's what you're going to make each month. Normally, those returns don't start for a good 6, 12, sometimes 18 months before you even start getting those. So you don't even make any money for the first 12 to 18 months. And then that's really all you make unless there's an exit, unless there's some kind of an exit, like a refinance or like they sell the property to somebody else. And again, I'm not preaching against multifamily. I believe in it. I would do it myself, and I think it's a good play. But at that point, when there's an exit, investors can seem to make sometimes high teens, 15, 16. I've even seen over 20%. ROI, returns on their actual money, the cash out versus cash in over that period of time ends up being, sometimes 20%. It's a great investment. And you also get depreciation. You get all these things that you can get. But if you look at single family, that exit is never mentioned. There's never an exit. And on top of that, a lot of times, when we started doing this, it was 12% returns. People were making cash on cash. Even if they bought the house cash, they were making, almost 12%. Now leveraged, people are still making close to 10% on their houses that we're selling turnkey, and there's no mention even on the pro forma that we send out. Maybe we should change this. Maybe of what it would look. What does it really look like if you were to sell this property in 5 to 7 years? And again, we have seen amazing. ROIs, like we're talking 50, 60, 70, even 100% ROI. If you've got $20,000 into a property that you paid $100 for, and all of a sudden it's worth $200,000, and you make $80,000 at closing, and you made maybe $20,000 over 3 to 5 years in rents, you just made over 100% year over year on your money. And who would say no to that? I don't know very many people that would. But that's kind of a off the topic rant that I had that was just kind of going through my head this morning. But we are on part 2. of a previous podcast.
Yeah,
that was just bonus, just so everybody knows.
It was bonus. A teaser for another podcast, but we left
that would
you.
Be great. Good idea, Jared.
Yeah, but we also had a cliffhanger, the last one.
We did.
So I was waxing eloquent with my version of how.
I thought he was going to say he was waxing his eyebrows.
No,
didn't say that. He was waxing eloquent.
My barber does that for me.
Okay.
But how to choose.
My wife plucks them, and yeah.
No. There's no plucking.
Painful.
It's no. I don't pluck. And about how to choose the right rent amount for your turnkey property. And so we were going through that. I gave all the good reasons.
Jared,
legitimate reasons. Waxing eloquent. It was. It was stirring. Many of you completely adjusted and changed your strategies. But But Tom dropped a bomb. He kind of like he pulled the grenade pin, threw it in there, and
we said, "Hey, we're gonna do another podcast."
Yeah, just left you all hanging. Yeah,
you got it.
Me included.
You have to wait a whole week to figure out.
It's true. So we're back.
Well, I'm just gonna take a totally different approach to this.
Different from the different one.
Different than from what you said. So what you said yesterday is the typical response. The typical response, and I'm just hoping that one of my mentors, Jeffrey Taylor, Mr. Landlord. If you guys have never been to a Mr. Landlord event, I highly recommend Mr. Landlord. I actually want to get him on this podcast. We probably should get him on. Because he is great. He is very energetic. Mm-hmm. He has been teaching people for over 30 years.
He's done a few deals.
Yeah. He's got about 200 rentals of his own in his own personal rental portfolio. And year after year, he just continues to get better, which is part of the reason why I like him. And he's a great stageman, and he walks around the stage the whole time, up and down aisles, and points at you, and if you try to look away, that's the person he's going to point. So you better keep your eyes right on him when he's walking by, because he's going to ask you, he's going to point you out. Yep. And this is one of the questions that he poses, and he says, "Hey, the question isn't what is the right amount. That's not the question he poses. The question he poses is, what is the first thing? You have a vacant property, and you need to fill it. What is the first thing that you should do?" And it's interesting because most people come and they're like, they think, well, this is obvious. I need to get it rented. So some people will come up with I need to get it fixed up. I need to paint it or get rid of the old carpet, or I need to clean it out, or I need to make it rent ready. That's what some people say. And he's like, well, yeah, you have to do that. And he kind of has his own little unique voice, which I love to hear. I love watching him, love being part of his events. We're actually one of the sponsors of his events down at Montego Bay next January. So you guys want to come see us there. Big free plug for Mr. Landlord. He didn't even have to pay for that. But we will be there. And one of his questions that he poses, that almost every time I see him lately, it kind of changes his speeches up every once in a while. But he was on the 5 levels of landlording. Now he's kind of on this, what's the first thing you need to do? And he believes that the most important thing a landlord can do is fill a vacancy. That is the most important thing you can do. Mm-hmm. But what is the first thing, Jared, that you think he comes up with when he says, what's the first thing you need to do when you have a vacancy?
You have a vacancy. What's the first thing he would say you're supposed to do? We didn't plan for this.
No, we didn't.
Tom's putting me on the spot.
Yeah, I'm doing just like Mr. Landlord would be so proud.
It's true. But they're not recorded during those times.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. So the first thing I would do when I fill a vacancy is I would go and assess the property.
Yeah, see, that's what people say. Yeah. I need to go assess the property. Yeah. Or, what we really normally end up getting to is I need to market the property for rent. That's what people end up saying. And he's like, but wait a minute. Before you market the property for rent, what do you have to do? And sometimes he stuns people. And most of the time, in fact, I've never seen one time where people actually give the right answer unless they've seen him speak, or unless they've been to, most of the time, several events. Because I've seen people that have been at his conference, which was after the boot camp, which was after the national conference. They've already seen him twice, and they still didn't get it right. So, and the answer really is, and this is what he says. He says, the first thing you need to do before you do the rehab, before you start marketing it, before you do any of those things, is you need to determine how much you want for rent. So think about that, Jared. Sure. That completely changes everything that you do. And even our last podcast. So our last podcast is a lot of what people talk about. So when he says you need to figure out how much you want for rent, he asks them, okay, well, how do you do that? That's kind of like he digs a little deeper. And he says, how do you do that? And most people come up with the things that we talked about on the last podcast, comparing comps. How much experience do you have in that area? You know, how much is your property versus the property next door to it? You know, he goes over all those things, and those are good answers. That's what most people do, and that's how most, even good landlords, will figure out how much they decide to market the place for rent. But he backs up and says, I'm going to encourage you and I'm going to challenge you to not do that. He says, don't look at what everybody else is doing. What you want to do is figure out how much do you want. And then he kind of goes through this big old long spiel about other avenues, other ways to market your property, other ways to find different tenants. And it pretty much all boils down to, like, for instance, like we do some of this. We do some Airbnb and some VRBO and some corporate rentals and some other things. He's really trying to get down to, you know, who do you want to rent to, and how much money are they willing to pay? But let's just say we're at one of our properties and we say, hey, the typical rent for this property is $1,200. Well, if I'm not going to take the typical approach, if I'm going to take my approach, and I'm going to say, how much do I want to get for this property? And I say, I want to get $1,500 for this property. Well, at that point, now you can go back to the property and think about what you want to do to it. Because it might be different. You might put in different finishes. You might niche it. You might have a certain niche that you're looking for these types of people. Maybe you're looking for only travelers. Maybe you're looking for only traveling nurses. Maybe you're only looking for people on vacation. Maybe you're looking for people that are doctors or nurses or are in a certain field, and maybe you could add things to that property that would, you know, drill down and help that particular, maybe they're business professionals, so maybe you have to then put built-in desks or something to that effect. Maybe you have to furnish it to get more money out of the property. There's so many different things that you can do to change how much money you get. Now, they're all going to require some kind of extra effort. Sure. They're all going to probably require some kind of extra work. But then he even encourages people to then go and try to find out where do those people hang out. If you want a certain niche, if you only want to rent to doctors, or you only want to rent to dentists, or you only want to rent to traveling nurses, there's certain places where those people go and hang out. And one of his favorite things as well is to try to find referral partners, you know, going out and trying to find people that would actually help you refer people back to your properties when you have them available. And maybe you'll give them $50 or $100 every time. But not only that, you actually have now another resource to help you if they don't pay rent, or like you have this other middleman to kind of help with that. So, you know, I know that was a little bit of a teaser, but I feel like Mr. Landlord does such a good job with that, and I think it's just a little bit of a different mindset. It changes our whole perspective on, you know, this business as a whole. It's not just what the market says, you know, and the market does what the market does. I get it. There's a part of that what we do. Trust me. What we talked about in the last podcast, we do that. Sure. But there are circumstances in which we back up and say, hey, all right, we're done with the status quo. We want to go a step above. We don't want $1,300 for this property. We want $1,500. Maybe we want $2,000. Maybe we want $2,500. And if that's the case, we know we're going to have to take a little bit of a step. We're going to have to do a little bit more work. It may cost a little bit more. It may take extra time. It may take management, you know, it may take a little extra. I actually believe one of those appreciations that you can get in real estate is managed appreciation, which means if you manage something to a certain degree, you can get more out of it. You can squeeze more out of the same exact house. You know, I even have a friend of mine that does residential assisted living. You know, think about that. You get a 10-bedroom house, and a typical 10-bedroom house, if you were to rent the whole house, you know, you might think, Jared, you could get $10,000 a month. You know, it's about $1.5 million. So if you could rent it, you know, I don't know very many people that are renting for $10,000 a month. No. But if you could rent it, maybe you could get $10,000 a month. I don't know. But he gets $80,000 a month. You know, because he's getting $5,000-$6,000 a month per bedroom because it's a residential assisted living. So, you know, that just kind of goes to kind of show, again, it's a little bit outside of the scope of what we do, you know, here at Active Turnkey and at Olson Group and Olson Property Services. But I will tell you, it is something that I think you should at least change your perspective a little bit when you're going to rent a house to try to figure out how much money to market it for rent. Yeah. I would challenge you to figure out how much you want for rent, and then be willing to do what it takes to get that amount of money.
Yeah, I think in some ways, Olson Group, we do that. So we would make that determination right away when we're acquiring a property. So when we're acquiring the property, we already have an idea what it's worth and what it should rent for, based upon exit strategy. So there are situations where Tom and Becky will be at a property, or Becky's our agent, acquiring agent. So she'll say, "Hey, I would like for this house to acquire this as a corporate rental, right. Yeah. So that's where, in that case, the strategy was. Now the difference, and where I agree with you, Tom, is as an investor, there are situations where we may stay in that rut, and we don't reassess on the turnover. We just automatically get it right going into the turnover situation, which the UO turnover, because we're concerned about the vacancy time. Maybe we didn't think about it, we didn't plan about it before. Now at that point, it's just, hey, what's the process for turnover? Let's get it done. Let's get it re-rented, right? As opposed to going into what you're saying, saying, well, do I want to change it? Should I change it? What are my other opportunities that could be available? And that's where obviously this scenario is extremely helpful. Even the 3 to 5
But even if it's only a couple $100 more, let's just say market rent, which everything we talked about last podcast was about market rent and maybe how to be on the top end of market rent. But let's just say market rent's $1,250 and I want $1,500. Like you don't have to go corporate rental amount. You don't have to go that route. But you might have to do some things to your property to be able to make that happen. So that's the whole concept behind it. Obviously, there's some more things that if you're a landlord, and I believe that a lot of people that listen to I know a lot of people that listen to our podcast that are not necessarily turnkey investors of ours, but they're just friends of ours from around the country. And they think that we're funny. I don't know why they think we're funny, but they think we're entertaining, and they think listening.
Both of us are funny.
Well, at least Jared's funny.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm funny, but I try.
I gotta do something. I gotta bring some kind of value. Some kind of value. Whatever that is.
But and we're just trying to give value to people as well that are out there, and try to teach people how, just the things that we've learned. You know, I can't say that all this knowledge has come from me. In fact, none of it has. I've learned what I've learned from other people, and I hope that that's what you're doing today by listening to the Active Turnkey podcast.
Yeah, I tend to buck the self-made man concept. Nobody is self-made. If you're self-made, then you're probably not in good shape. No, I mean,
and you're probably pretty dumb.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably not listening to the podcast because you're self-made. And you're not willing to listen and learn from anybody, and so you can't read any books.
Nope. Can't read, can't learn.
Can't watch any YouTube videos.
That means you would have learned how to read on your own. No teachers.
Nope. Yep. Sorry. So if you can humble yourself to that point, now you got some opportunity.
I'm sure our listeners are humble though because they're listening.
Yeah, these guys are great. You guys are awesome, by the way.
Our listeners are the best listeners.
They really are.
I mean, I can just hear them right now clicking on the subscribe buttons. Yeah. They're calling their friends right now, and they're telling everybody, you've got to listen to the Active Turnkey podcast. These guys are ridiculous, but they're funny.
Yeah.
They may not give good content, but
may or may not. Now that's up to interpretation too.
There are some times where good content comes out.
Sure. And there are some of you who really enjoy it, and some people you may be moving on. That's okay.
No, right? There's no moving on.
There's no moving on. No, everything is
Everybody's going to give us a 5-star review today, and they're going to like and subscribe, and they're going to tell their friends, and they're all going to be here for the Real Estate Free for All event, September 30th through October 2nd.
How much does that event cost, Tom?
It is free. That's why it's called the Free for All. So a free event. You even get 2 lunches and 2 dinners for free. Okay, so if you're local here to Northwest Indiana,
it's a no-brainer.
Hop in, get a free lunch, connect, find some national speakers, and maybe you can find a lender. We have lots of our private lenders will be here. Lots of our turnkey investors will be here. And also just friends of mine from around the country that we have connected over the years and we're buddies with. And we just like to hang out and have a good time. Wow. That's why we're doing it. We're doing it for 3 reasons. Hang out, have a good time, to network, to do deals together, and to learn a little bit. Maybe we might learn a little bit in the middle of all that.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Now, of course, we do build rental portfolios for investors. So if you're looking to either start a new portfolio you're looking to get into investing, or you're looking for an additional market, we can certainly help you with that. You can go to our website at buyolsongroup.com, or you can reach out to me at jared@buyolsongroup.com. I'd be happy to help you. You can get on our list. You can see deals that are coming out and even get notifications about a podcast like this as it comes out.
It's awesome, Jared. I actually talked to an investor last night. He texted me out of the blue, and he said he wanted to thank me because 7 years ago I sat down with him at an event and I went over rentals with him and I explained it to him, and he had all these questions and he thought about all these bad things that could come up, and I basically told him, yeah, those things happen sometimes. So I mean, and he was just shocked that I was just honest with him. And I told him, yes, sometimes things happen. And he's like, I've only got a couple properties with you and I wish I had more. But he kind of had a little bit, he was thanking me, but he also kind of a little complaint. He's like, the problem is when you send the deals out, they're sold so fast that I can't get my hands on them. And I was like, well, I'm sorry. And he's like, well, that's a good problem to have. And he tried to say that, he was glad that we were having good success. But then I actually thanked him because yesterday wasn't a great day around here. We had some issues, not in the business, but like at particular houses, and it was just one of those days. But I just thanked him for reaching out to me and being encouragement to me. But it was a complaint because there are really a lot of people on our buyers list, and if you guys want to get on that list, our properties do go fast. We don't just say it. It's true. It is true. So if you're looking for us to help you with a rental portfolio, buyolsongroup.com, and you can get on our buyers list. And when we have properties available, which we do several times a month, you can see if those properties work for you. And if they don't, that's fine, but at least you can see what's out there. It's amazing. It's shocking to me at times what I see other people selling. And sometimes I send them to you and I'm like, I can't believe other people are buying this at that. I mean, the houses that we're selling for 120 and 150, people are selling for 170 and 200. Yeah. And I'm like, maybe we should be charging more. I don't know, but I just feel like we're offering a really good service, and I do stand by our product, and I think that we do the best we possibly can for our owners and for our investors. So again, if you're interested in letting us help you build a rental portfolio, buyolsongroup.com. That's going to do it for today's episode.
That's right. Active Turnkey.
The best way to buy rentals.
Thanks, guys.
Olson Group Network makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, Olson Group Network does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement. Any third-party materials or content of any third-party site referenced in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions, standards, or policies of Olson Group Network. Olson Group Network assumes no responsibility or liability for the accuracy or completeness of the content contained in third-party materials or on third-party sites referenced in this podcast, or the compliance with the applicable laws of such materials and/or links referenced herein.